Hello YouTube, my name is Daniel and welcome back to another video. In this video I'm going to be refactoring the database in my Simple Notes app to be using Room Database. So this is the app that I created in a previous video. It's just a simple notes application. You can click on this button here and you can go ahead and add a note. So note 1, and then you can also add a body to this note here. You click add note and it'll go onto the recycler view, and then you can drag and drop from the recycler view as well. And you can drag it onto this bin and then you can then delete the note, and this will delete from the database. So we're going to be tearing down the SQLite DB and then replacing it with RoomDB. Before we get started, this is just a few dependencies that we need to add and also some plugins. So in your plugins, we need to add Kotlin-parcelize because we're going to be replacing serializable with parcelable, and Kotlin-caps for the annotation processing. Then for our dependencies for Room, we require these three dependencies here, and also for live data, we need these dependencies here. So once you've added those dependencies and then synced it, we should be ready to go. So the first file we're going to refactor will be the notes item, and this is under models. And here we're going to be defining our table. So for all data classes that are going to be in tables in Room, you need to add an entity annotation at the top of the class. We just import that, and in here we can specify the table name, and the table name of this table will be notes. And then inside the class we can then specify our column names and also our primary key. So the ID will be our primary key, and then for the column names we just need to annotate each of these with column info and open brackets, and then we can specify the column name. So this one will be title, and then we can copy and paste this for each one. The name of this one will be note, and the name of this one will be timestamp. Next, in our notes database class, we can get rid of pretty much all of this, and then we can replace it with the code to create our Room database. It's best to remove all the imports as well. And this class will be an abstract class, and we need to give this the database annotation, and then we specify the entities. So these are going to be the data classes or models that are going to be inside this DB, and we only have one of those, and this needs to be in an array. So we pass in the notes item and then the class. Then we just need to specify a version, which will be 1, and this will implement a Room database, and will not have a constructor. Then we just need one function to access the DAO, which we will create after this class, and that will be called Notes Dao. Then we need to add a companion object with a single function called provideDB. This will take a single parameter, which will be context, and this will equal room.databaseBuilder. Then we can pass the context that we got from the constructor, and then the class, which will be notes database class.java, and then a name for the database, which we will just call notes, and then we need to add .build at the end of this to build our database. Now we can go ahead and create the Notes DAO. So right click on the database folder and select new interface. So Kotlin class/file, and we will call this Notes DAO, and this will be an interface. And we need to annotate this with @DAO. And DAO stands for Data Access Object, and this will be the interface which defines how we can access and modify our notes. So this will be retrieving notes from the DB, updating notes from the DB, and also deleting notes. So this class is going to have 4 functions. It will first have a function to retrieve all of the notes, then a function to update an individual note, to insert a note, and finally to delete a note. Firstly, we're going to create the function to query all of the notes. So @query for the annotation, and inside here we can write any type of SQL query that we need. And this is just going to be simple select star from notes. And then we need to add the function body. So get all notes. And this will return live data list of note item, and this will be observed in our main activity. And to get this error, just add a capital. The next function will be update. And this will be a suspend function. And we're just going to call this update note, and then we just need to pass in a note item. And then from the note item that is passed, it will then be able to update that note item in the DB by looking at its ID. The next function will be insert. So suspend fun insert note. Again, we're just going to pass a note item. And finally, it will be the delete function. So query delete from notes where ID equals note ID. And this is how we add parameters to our queries. So you specify a condition such as where ID equals, and then the 2 dots, so the colon, and then the parameter name, and this one will be note ID, and you can just pass that as a parameter in the function. So suspend fun delete note, and then pass in the note ID, which will be an int, and this can also return an int just to say that it was successfully deleted, and this will return 1 if it's successful and 0 if it failed. And that's it for the Notes DAO, and then what's left is to update the main activity to use these functions. So if we click on main activity, we're going to see a lot of errors in here, and we just need to replace these errors with the correct functions. So the Notes database, we're going to be renaming this here to DB handler, just to give it a more descriptive name. And this will no longer be Notes database, it will be Notes DAO, because that's what holds all of the functions. To create an instance of the Notes DAO, we need to first create our database, so Notes database dot provide DB, and then pass in the context, and then we can access the Note Dao here, and then we just need to scroll down and start replacing the functions. So we're going to cut this out of here and then create a delete note function. And it will just have one parameter, which will be the note ID, and that will be a string. And we can paste this in here, and then the result will be db handler dot delete note, and then we pass the note ID, and then we just have to cast it to an int. And the reason we've got an error here is because this is a suspend function, so this needs to be called from a coroutine. To launch a coroutine, I'm going to use lifecycle scope. And the reason I'm using this is because we want the coroutine to be bounded to this scope. So when main activity dies, the coroutine will also die. So lifecycle scope dot launch. And then we need to provide a dispatcher because we don't want this to run on the main thread. We want this to run on the IO thread. And then all of this logic in here can be moved into that coroutine scope. And then once we've got our result from the DB, we're going to perform some UI actions such as setting the bin drawable and showing the toast. So we want to run these on the main thread, and we can switch the thread by using with context, and then pass in dispatchers.main, and just put in this if-else block into that main thread coroutine scope right there. And then we no longer need to get notes from the DB because we're going to be observing that using live data. And that is our delete note function done. And then we just need to call it in here, pass in the note ID, and also dismiss the dialog, which will be po.dismiss. And then we need to refactor our other functions. So firstly, I'm going to refactor the add note function. So we no longer need to get notes from DB, and we're not using add note. So we're going to launch another coroutine here. So lifecycle scope.launch, pass in the dispatcher, and we're just going to run dbHandler.insert note and then pass in the note item. And then for the edit function, we can just copy and paste this and change a few details. So instead of insert note, it's going to be update note. And we just need to create our note item up here. So note item equals note item. Pass in the note, the title, and the ID. And that's it for the edit note function. We no longer need the get notes from DB function because we're going to be using live data. And then for the setup recycler view, we're just going to make a few changes here. We're no longer going to pass the no item list in as a parameter. And we're just going to remove this from here. So in this function, we're literally just going to be defining the recycler view and then setting up the layout manager. And we're going to be using the recycler view as a global variable now, as we want to update it automatically when new items get added or removed from the DB. So I'm going to remove that declaration here and then add it as a global variable up here. So private latent var, recycler view, and then we just add the type, which will be recycler view. And then we can see we're assigning it here, and we're going to run this function straight away in our onCreate. We can remove get notes from the DB. And now I'm going to create a new function called init observers. And in here we're going to observe the get all notes function, which is return live data. So whenever anything gets updated in that table, this screen will be notified, and then we can show the most up-to-date items. In order to do that, we need to call get all notes and then .observe, and then we pass in the owner, which will be this, and then the observer, and we can just pass in the 2 brackets here. We don't need to actually type out observer. And then we get access to our notes in here, and I'm going to be calling this notes. And in order to update our recycler view, we just need to create a new instance of the adapter. So val adapter, note adapter. And then we just need to pass in our list of notes. And we can see we've got an error here because it's asking for a mutable list. We don't actually need a mutable list in the adapter, so we can change that parameter in the constructor here and just change it to list of notes item. And we can see that didn't give us any errors, so I'm sure it'll be fine. And then just pass in this for the clip listener, because main activity is implementing that clip listener. And then we just need to assign the adapter to the recycler view. So recycler view.adapter equals adapter. And that should be everything for the refactor from SQLite DB to RoomDB. So let's run the app and let's see if everything works. So the app is now started up. Firstly, let's see if we can add a note. So clicking on the button, giving a title. So let's call this note 1. And then click add note. And we can see the note has been added to our recycler view, so it has been inserted. So the next one we can try is editing a note, and we can do that by clicking on the note in the recycler view and then changing the text, so note 2. And we can see that's been edited and it's been updated automatically as the main activity is observing the notes from the DB using live data. And finally, let's just see if we can delete a note. So I'm going to drag this over to the bin and then select yes, we do want to delete this note. And we can see the note has now been removed. And just to make sure it has worked, if we close down the app and then reopen it, we shouldn't see any notes in our DB. And we can see here the app is now reopened and there is no notes in the recycler view. So that is SQLite removed, and now we are running RoomDB in this app. So that'll be it for this video, and in the next video I'll be refactoring this app to use Jetpack Compose for the UI, so stay tuned for that one. Please like and comment, and please subscribe.